The topic for today is one many people feel but rarely talk about openly: the art and dark psychology of ignoring a woman. Before anything else, let's make something clear. This isn't about being cruel, manipulative, or using silence as a weapon. This is about understanding why emotional distance can have such a powerful effect in relationships, and why so many men reach a point where words stop feeling useful. As a therapist, I've spent years listening to men who felt invisible in their own relationships. They tried explaining themselves, apologizing, doing more, caring harder, yet the more they gave, the less they were heard. And eventually they learned something about human psychology. Silence speaks in ways talking never can. I can't mention names, but I've seen women who barely reacted to conflict suddenly break down in fear the moment a man stopped calling, stopped arguing, stopped chasing. Ignoring is not loud, but it's deeply felt. Sometimes a man pulls away because he's overwhelmed. Sometimes because he's tired of repeating himself. And sometimes it's out of self-respect, because conversation turned into disrespect and presence turned into being taken for granted. Ignoring becomes a way of saying, "I matter too," without ever raising a voice. But here's where the controversy comes in. Society often tells men to fix everything. Apologize first, swallow their pride, never walk away. Nobody teaches them that distance can protect their mental health. Nobody teaches them that silence can reveal who actually values the relationship. When a woman suddenly panics, questions herself, or tries harder, it isn't magic, it's psychology. People rarely realize what they have until the emotional supply disappears. However, ignoring has a darker side. It can become manipulation. It can be used to control instead of communicate. And it can damage trust if misused. That's why emotional intelligence matters, knowing when silence is self-defense and when it causes harm. In this video, we're going to explore how ignoring affects the female mind, why it works, when it backfires, and how a man should use distance responsibly. Let's go deeper. 1. When silence becomes louder than words, there are moments in a relationship where talking doesn't solve anything. Words start repeating. Arguments loop, promises lose meaning. At some point, silence becomes the only thing left. It's strange how quiet can become louder than shouting, but it happens. As a therapist, I've watched it unfold many times. A man reaches a point where he feels exhausted, unseen, or misunderstood, and instead of arguing, he stops reacting. He stops explaining. He stops fighting for attention, and that silence hits harder than any speech ever could. Women often believe men don't have deep emotional responses because many don't show them. Men hide pain behind work, distractions, or even humor. So when a man finally goes quiet, it isn't weakness. Many times, it's the result of emotional overload. Silence becomes a form of self-protection. It's a way of stepping back from someone who keeps pushing, keeps testing, or keeps taking advantage. And whether anyone admits it or not, women can feel that shift instantly. They feel it in conversations that don't happen, in the absence of a good morning, in the way their phone stays blank when they expected a reply. Silence forces the mind to fill in the gaps. A woman who once felt comfortable suddenly wonders what went wrong. She replays her own behavior, her own words, because now she's the one who doesn't have answers. That's the psychological power of ignoring. It interrupts the comfort. When someone has unlimited access to your attention, they stop valuing it. But when that access disappears, they start realizing its worth. This doesn't mean silence is about punishment. It isn't always a strategy. Many men don't even think of it that way. They just shut down when they feel that nothing they say is respected or heard. It's a survival mechanism, not a manipulation tool. But regardless of intention, the effect is powerful. The same woman who ignored his feelings suddenly wants to talk. The same woman who thought he would always be there begins to feel insecure. And that insecurity comes from realizing attention was never guaranteed. Silence can create clarity. It forces reflection. It reveals who is willing to fix things and who only valued control. But it also requires emotional maturity, because silence can heal or damage depending on how and why it's used. When a man stops explaining himself, that's not the moment she loses him. That's the moment she realizes she already did. 2. How distance exposes real intentions. Men are often taught that if a woman is pulling away, the solution is to chase harder, call more, prove yourself, show effort. But in reality, distance can reveal truth in ways chasing never will. When a man steps back, not out of anger but out of self-respect, people show who they really are. As a therapist, I've watched relationships transform the moment a man stops being the one who always initiates. Silence has a way of clearing out illusions. When you're constantly available to someone, they never have to question whether you care. You remove the mystery, the anticipation, and the value of your presence. Some women become comfortable, even careless, because they believe you'll always be there. But the moment you stop giving endless access, everything changes. Distance forces a woman to reflect instead of react. It makes her ask herself whether she appreciates you or just the attention you give her. For some men, pulling back feels wrong at first. They worry it means they're abandoning the relationship. But there's a difference between giving space and disappearing. You're not punishing anyone. You're giving both sides a moment to see the relationship without constant emotional noise. And this is where psychology becomes interesting. When you remove yourself, the truth shows up fast. A woman who truly cares will notice the silence. She will check on you, ask what's wrong, or try to reconnect. Her energy will shift from comfort to concern. A woman who only enjoyed the benefits of your effort will either get irritated or move on to someone else who gives her attention without boundaries. That reaction alone tells a man everything he needs to know. Distance is a filter. It separates those who value you from those who only value what you give. Men need to understand this. Not everyone deserves your time, energy, or emotional life. Attention is a form of currency, and you have the right to invest it wisely. You don't owe constant availability to anyone who treats you as an option. And here's something many men never learn. A woman's respect grows when she realizes you're not dependent on her validation. When you show you can pull back, protect your peace, and live your life without begging for affection, it shifts the power dynamic. You stop becoming predictable. You stop becoming emotionally replaceable. Confidence is not loud, it's quiet, and it's shown through actions, not speeches. Distance exposes intentions. It shows who makes an effort, who disappears, and who never cared in the first place. You don't lose anything by stepping back. You only lose the people who were never meant to stay. 3. The psychological trigger of losing attention. There's a quiet moment in every relationship when someone starts to realize they're no longer the center of the other person's world. It doesn't happen with yelling. It doesn't happen with arguments. It happens with silence. When a man pulls his attention away from a woman who's used to being chased, something shifts inside her. The mind reacts in ways most people don't openly admit, but the psychology is very real. Human beings are wired to crave attention from the people they value, or from the people who once valued them. When that attention suddenly stops, the brain interprets it as a threat of loss. For some women, that's the first time they truly feel fear of losing the man they believed would never walk away. That fear creates a psychological trigger. It makes her question her behavior, her importance, and her assumptions about the relationship. As a therapist, I've watched women who were calm, confident, even dismissive, suddenly become anxious when a man stops responding. They scroll through old messages. They reach out more. They replay arguments in their head. The silence forces them into reflection, and the mind tries to fill in the blanks. Did he meet someone else? Did she push too far? Was he more valuable than she realized? Men rarely see this because they only notice the distance they created, not the internal reaction happening on the other side. Women feel the absence emotionally and psychologically. When attention is constant, it's easy to ignore. When attention disappears, it becomes precious. Here's where the real psychological twist happens. The moment a man becomes unavailable, he stops being predictable. Predictability kills interest. Uncertainty fuels attraction and curiosity. When she doesn't know what you're thinking, why you pulled back, or when you'll reach out again, her mind starts chasing the answers. The attention she once took for granted becomes something she wants back. This doesn't mean a man should play games. Healthy silence comes from protecting your peace, not trying to manipulate someone into missing you, but understanding the psychology helps men stop believing they must beg for affection. You don't need to convince anyone to value you. Your absence will do the talking. Even the most secure women feel a psychological shift when someone stops showing interest. It's human nature. When something valuable is always there, you stop noticing it. When it's gone, you feel the loss. And when a man pulls back, it forces a woman to decide, was she attached to him or just to the feeling of being desired? Men need to understand this clearly. Your attention is powerful, not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because you are not emotionally unlimited. When you stop feeding someone with constant reassurance and effort, you will see their true feelings surface. And sometimes silence teaches a woman more about you than your words ever could. 4. Why chasing destroys respect. Imagine a man in a relationship who cares deeply about his partner. He wants peace, connection, and stability. Whenever she pulls away, he rushes toward her. If she gives short answers, he writes longer messages. If she seems distant, he tries harder, buying gifts, apologizing for things he didn't do, over-explaining himself, anything to keep her close. From the outside, this looks romantic, but psychologically, something unhealthy begins to grow. In therapy sessions, I've heard stories like this more times than I can count. I can't share names or personal details, but many men come in exhausted from chasing someone who was slowly losing respect for them. Not because they were bad partners, but because they believed love meant proving themselves endlessly. The problem is that chasing changes the structure of the relationship. It tells the other person, you are the prize, I am the pursuer. And once that dynamic forms, it is very hard to reverse. There was a man who sat across from me one afternoon, hurt, confused, and drained. His girlfriend had stopped calling as much, stopped showing affection, and acted like his presence was optional. The more distant she became, the harder he tried. But instead of bringing her closer, his effort pushed her further away. Every time he reached out, she felt more comfortable taking him for granted. He didn't realize that his chasing was teaching her a lesson. She could pull away without consequences. This happens in many relationships. When a man chases, the woman subconsciously learns that she holds more emotional power. He becomes predictable. She becomes the one who chooses when to give love and when to withhold it. And here's the painful truth. People rarely respect what they can easily control. When the man finally pulled back, not out of anger but out of exhaustion, everything changed. For weeks he had begged for attention. Then suddenly he went silent. No more long messages, no more apologies. No more trying to fix what he didn't break. And that silence woke her up. She went from ignoring him to asking if something was wrong. She went from unread messages to calling his phone. In that silence, she realized something frightening. He didn't need her as much as she assumed. Chasing destroys respect because it removes balance. A relationship needs two people choosing each other, not one begging and the other deciding. When a man stops chasing, he stops feeding the imbalance. His silence gives the woman space to recognize his value on her own. And if she genuinely cares, she will return. But if she only cared about the attention, she will disappear. Either way, his dignity stays intact. A man never needs to run after love. The right person meets you halfway. Silence and self-respect protect you from becoming an option in someone else's life. 5. The difference between self-respect and manipulation. Pulling back, staying silent, or giving someone space can be healthy, but only when it comes from self-respect, not from trying to control how she feels. A lot of men get this part wrong. They hear advice about ignoring a woman, and they turn it into a game. They purposely delay responses, create jealousy, or disappear just to force a reaction. That's not strength. That's manipulation. And while it may work for a moment, it destroys trust in the long run. Self-respect looks very different. It means knowing when you've given enough of yourself. It means stepping back when a woman disrespects you, dismisses your feelings, or takes your effort for granted. You're not going silent to punish her. You're protecting your peace. A man who acts from dignity isn't trying to make her suffer. He's simply refusing to suffer in silence. In therapy, I've seen men confused about where the line is. One man in particular believed that ignoring his girlfriend would teach her a lesson. Every time she upset him, he disappeared for days, refusing to speak to her until she was anxious and apologizing. He thought this proved he was strong, but his silence wasn't healing anything. It was creating fear. Eventually, she stopped feeling safe talking to him at all. The relationship didn't get stronger. It got colder. That is the wrong way. The right way isn't about winning. It's about clarity, honesty, and boundaries. If a woman has crossed a line, disrespect, manipulation, emotional games, silence can be a boundary, but not a weapon. Some men need to learn how to use their words before they use distance. You don't have to argue, shout, or explain every detail of your pain, but you can say something simple and mature. I'm not going to argue. I need space to think. This conversation isn't respectful, so I'm stepping back. I care about you, but I won't chase attention. Those sentences aren't emotional weapons. They're boundaries. They tell her why you're pulling back without trying to hurt her. They protect your dignity while still treating her like a human being with feelings. On the other hand, the wrong things to say are phrases designed to create panic, guilt, or jealousy. You'll miss me when I'm gone. I'm ignoring you because you deserve it. I hope you're thinking about what you did. Those statements aren't confident. They're insecure. A man with self-respect doesn't need to announce his silence or threaten someone with it. He simply steps back and focuses on his life. Healthy distance gives both sides room to breathe, reflect, and reset. Manipulative silence only creates emotional damage. Real power isn't in making her afraid to lose you. It's in showing that you can respect yourself without destroying her. When a man learns that difference, his relationships become stronger, calmer, and far more honest. 6. When ignoring backfires. Ignoring a woman can shift power, rebuild respect, or create space for clarity, but it can also backfire in ways many men never see coming. Silence is powerful, but power without emotional intelligence can undo everything you're trying to protect. Some men believe that the moment they pull away, the woman will panic, chase, apologize, or suddenly value them. But what happens when she doesn't? What happens when the silence pushes her further away instead of pulling her closer? I've watched men come into therapy shocked because the woman they ignored simply moved on. They assumed distance would make her realize his value. Instead, it showed her he wasn't emotionally safe. Some women don't react to silence with reflection, they react with resentment. If the connection was already fragile, ignoring her might break what was left of the bond. Not because she didn't care, but because she couldn't trust his communication. Ignoring backfires when a man uses it instead of speaking. A woman can't fix what she doesn't understand. She can't apologize for something she was never told. Silence without explanation feels like abandonment, not self-respect. It teaches her that conflict means disappearing, not solving problems. Over time, she might stop trying, not because she doesn't love you, but because she's tired of being shut out. Ignoring also fails when the intention behind it is insecurity. If you're silent because you're afraid to express yourself, she'll sense it. If you're silent because you want her to chase you, she may see it as emotional immaturity. Confidence is attractive, games are not. But there's another side to this. Sometimes men think they're being strong by staying silent, but emotionally they're still waiting, checking her social media, waiting for messages, hoping she'll reach out. That's not strength, that's avoidance. Silence only works when you have truly accepted whatever outcome comes from it. If you pull away just to get a reaction and she doesn't react, the silence starts to hurt you more than her. And then there are women who have been emotionally ignored before, women who know how to detach quickly, women who learned not to chase anyone. When a man ignores that kind of woman, he might think she'll break first, but she won't. She'll mirror his distance, protect her heart, and eventually move on. In these cases, silence doesn't make her appreciate you. It teaches her that you're inconsistent. Ignoring backfires when a man forgets communication matters. You can create space without cutting her out. You can step back without disappearing. You can set a boundary without turning it into punishment. Silence is not a replacement for maturity. If a woman is valuable to you, talk before you pull away. Explain before you disappear. Ignoring should be the last resort, not the first response, because if she was willing to love you, losing her trust is a much greater loss than winning an argument. 7. Using space to rebuild power and clarity. There is a difference between disappearing and stepping back. One destroys connection, the other rebuilds it. When a man learns how to use space the right way, something unusual happens. He doesn't just regain control, he regains himself. Silence isn't about hurting her, it's about hearing yourself again. Sometimes a man gets so wrapped up in trying to fix a relationship that he loses his individuality. He forgets his hobbies, his goals, his discipline, his purpose. His life begins revolving around one person, and the imbalance makes him weaker, not stronger. But when he pulls back, calmly, quietly, without anger, he remembers who he was before the chaos. The space becomes healing instead of punishment. In therapy, I've seen men do this the right way. They didn't block her, insult her, or try to get revenge. They simply stopped pouring energy into a place where it wasn't being valued. And instead of waiting by the phone or stalking her social media, they worked on themselves. They went back to the gym. They reconnected with friends. They focused on their careers. Their silence wasn't emptiness. It was growth. That's when the emotional balance shifts. A woman notices when a man doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't crumble. She feels the difference between silence out of pain and silence out of confidence. When silence is rooted in self-improvement, it becomes attractive, not manipulative. Women respect men who can survive without constant reassurance. They are drawn to men who have a life outside of them. Space creates mystery, and mystery creates interest. But here's the deeper truth. Space gives both people time to be honest with themselves. If she actually cares and values the relationship, she won't let silence become permanent. She will reach out, soften, and try to reconnect. She will reflect on her actions, not just yours. She will recognize what she risks losing. If she doesn't, then space reveals the truth. You weren't losing a partner. You were holding on to someone who never intended to stay. Using space the right way means you remain respectful. You don't gossip about her. You don't post online trying to make her jealous. You don't run to another woman for validation. You simply focus on yourself, because a man who values his emotional peace becomes stronger, wiser, and more attractive. Silence is most powerful when your life continues to grow without her. And when she sees that you didn't collapse in loneliness, something shifts in her mind. She sees a man with discipline, self-control, and purpose. A man she cannot control, replace, or manipulate. Space is not about cutting someone off. It's about giving the relationship a chance to breathe. It's about giving yourself clarity. If she comes back, you'll know it's real. If she doesn't, you walk away with dignity intact. Either way, you win because you chose yourself. Ignoring a woman isn't about cruelty, ego, or winning. It's about understanding the power of silence, emotional boundaries, and self-respect. When a man steps back for the right reasons, he gains clarity. He sees who values him, who takes him for granted, and who is willing to meet him halfway. Used wisely, space can restore balance, rebuild dignity, and reveal truth. Used irresponsibly, it damages trust and disconnects two people who once cared. In the end, a man's greatest strength is not in chasing someone, but in knowing his worth, protecting his peace, and refusing to stay where he is unseen.